This is Lacey Everett here with Minds in Motion. In order to help others, subscribe, which is free, so we can continue building our positive mental health community. Share it with friends and family so they can reap of the benefits as well. I truly care about your success, so I would love to see your comments and thoughts. Woo! Today's sports psychology guest is Elfid Kovacevic. He is known as a professional indoor soccer player. Elfid is going to give us a wonderful, culturally diverse perspective to soccer as he has played around the world, quite literally. From a young boy in Bosnia to a refugee in Germany, and now here in the U.S. Hi, Elfid. It's nice to see you.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you as well.
I wanted to ask you why you chose indoor professional soccer, footy, versus outdoor, or if that was even a choice. It was just an opportunity for you and you took it.
So I would say that it was more of a, I mean, obviously the decision was made, but it was a unconscious choice. So after I graduated high school, I went overseas to Bosnia and I played in the first division, signed a contract for the first division team. And the reason why I left out there was because I went to a camp for a under 21 national team, for the Bosnian national team. So I was one of the recruits. So there was 50 players there, and I was one of the 4 guys that got picked to play for the under 21 national team. And at that moment, it was they kind of framed the path for me to where, okay, well, from here you're gonna have to sign a professional contract in a league to where it's recognized and where we can show, hey, this is where he's playing right now. Obviously, I couldn't use my high school. It was right after high school, as soon as I graduated high school.
Right after high school?
Right after high school, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And obviously here in the United States, it's more the traditional, you're going to college, and then from college, it's kind of if you want to pursue professional or not. In Europe, it's a little different. But regardless, after I went over there overseas and realized the lifestyle and how it is, and started getting adapted to it, and it's a new experience, a kid being in a different country, being by itself, basically introduced to my agent, signed on with my agent, and then after I came back, that's where kind of that's where a lot of people come into your life, right? Because you made it, right? You signed something, you're a professional athlete, you're going the right way. And at that moment, everybody wants a piece. Everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to to grab you under their wing and whatnot. So when I came back, I went to Chicago. So I'm from Grand Rapids. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I came to Grand Rapids, Michigan when I was 14. Before that, I was in Germany. But when I came back, a couple of the teams from Chicago started bringing me down on the weekends and just helping their teams out to play. Obviously, coming from overseas and playing at that high of a level, I was, above of everyone that I was, that was playing against, and that's when kind of things turned to where, I don't know if it was the best decision for me, but I made a decision basically a day before my flight back. I'll still remember the date. It was January 12th. I was supposed to go back. January 11th, I called my agent and I had a ticket and I said, I'm not going back. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to go play, in Chicago. And
wow.
It was not a good conversation, as you can imagine. But yeah, so that's kind of where the indoor started. And, once I played there, I realized that there isn't a future for somebody, and luckily I realized that pretty quick, to where it didn't take me years and years and years to where, you know, I mean, the highest paid player there was getting paid $5,000 a month. You know, yeah, you have living expenses and whatnot, but I mean, compared to that's the best player and that's your prime. So you're going to last, what, 2, 3, 4 years at that level, basically. But if you want to raise a family, if you want to have a career, you know, there isn't much to advance, you know, with indoor soccer.
I see.
So once I started playing indoor, at that moment, my mom kind of started pushing me back to it, because she was always pushing me to go to college and get a degree. And then after that, she's like, you know, you'll have something under your belt. Education was always the most important to her. Mm-hmm. So once I realized the indoor wasn't as big as I thought it would be, and it was kind of just, I made a naive decision, you know, still being young and trusting some people that, you know, showed me just kind of a good life and fun, and, you know, not really the professional, what I was going through when I went overseas, discipline and the mindset, and, you know, high goals, to where, you know, even with my agent, it was, you're going from Bosnia, after you play a few games, it was the next move to Croatia, to Austria, to Germany. He already had everything mapped out to where, you know, you're constantly improving, and you have to constantly keep getting better and better to play in higher and higher and better teams and leagues, you know, to where over here, it's kind of like, okay, this is it. There's nowhere else to go, you know? So it's kind of like you plateau, and you start, you know, you start going down, if anything.
I noticed too that you had to advocate for yourself a lot, and you had to call your agent and say, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. And that takes some strength, because I know it's really common for athletes, you know, like you said, once you make it, it's kind of, a lot of people want you, you know, and want to please you. So you kind of are just in it at first, and you're like, oh yes, I'll do this. But no, it's about what you want. And I admire that you learned through that to advocate for yourself. And I also want to applaud your mom for a second. Yes, Mom, because education, I agree with her. And my grandfather used to say, get an education and you will never go hungry. And I've always just kind of had that in the back of my head. So I understand that. And it sounds like indoor soccer has just kind of evolved for you. It's kind of just happened naturally. Nothing was forced. It's just kind of how your life went.
I was talking about agents too. You know, agents usually have a bad reputation, you know, just for looking for their interests and looking, you know, to kind of take advantage of players. And once you're done, they kind of, you know, throw you. Thinking about it now, I'm not sure if that's true 100%, just because, you know, if looking at myself, if I would have trusted in my agent, and if I would have gone with him, I think I would have, my life would have gone a different route, but it would have gone a route to where I could have achieved a lot more through soccer and in the soccer world. Mm-hmm. But then again, you know, that had to be my decision. And, you know, sometimes I think being that young and growing up in this country, you know, going through high school, it's a little different than when I was in Germany, for instance, you know, for athletes there. So they see athletes over there as a profession, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to be a professional soccer player, you know, even when I played, when I went overseas and when I played there, we had the younger guys that played, you know, in the under 18 or U18, 19s, U21s that would come and practice with us. But they would be from all over, right? And they would live on site and get education, but their major, their profession is soccer, basically. And, you know, to where here it's high school and college, and then soccer's kind of just added to it.
That's a good point. You know, it is, yeah, that's a really good point. It is like that here.
Yeah. And so going back, like I said, in Germany, I think if I would have stayed and playing for those clubs, my discipline would have been different, just because once you're in a club, you're kind of groomed what it takes and what you need to do to get to the next level. To where here, it's every high school or every college wants you, but you're dispensable. They want you for the 4 years and that's it, right? Because you can't play anymore. So everybody's like, oh, come on, come over here, come play. But it's more of a short term instead of looking for you for a long term, right?
Because you've been fortunate enough to not only play footy around the US, but all around the world. So it's interesting to hear you distinguish the differences between
each country. Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, I mean, it comes once you make that decision to play. That decision's made at 13, 14, 15 years old. Wow. And at that moment, and that decision, again, it doesn't have to be made by you directly. It's more by your skill and how good you are at that level. And once a top team takes you, at that moment, you're kind of living that lifestyle. To where here you can have a kid that's phenomenal, in high school, 18 years, he's the best, when, I don't know, like you could just see a bright future for him, and he gets in college and he's just nowhere to be seen. Because he's going to college, it's, a big party scene, it's a different lifestyle, and then you kind of you're like, oh man, I'm enjoying my life, I'm having fun, so you're kind of not as disciplined unless, you have somebody there to kind of guide you through and kind of push you and be there for you when you're, to what is your goal? Do you want to do this? After college, this is the next step. And here it's the Columbine, right? It's like, oh, if somebody picks you up. But the colleges aren't focused on the Columbine because they don't have anything from that. The colleges are focused getting the best out of you in those 4 years. Yes. Getting the most out of you and trying to win as many national championships or any championships as possible. Because after that, once you're done with those 4 years, it's kind of you're kind of almost forgotten, So for the long run, I mean, it's very tough for athletes,
Absolutely.
In this country, so especially if you like I said, if you make it by 18, 19 and you don't have the right guidance, if you don't have the right mindset and right goals and continue to strive forward, you kind of have to do it on your own. You don't have a system like in Europe to where the club is behind you and you're basically raised by the club and going through their they still make sure that you get an education, but your primary education is soccer, and groom you to be a professional soccer player.
It makes me think of Messi. He was just groomed along in Barca. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So and he's not the only one. That's most of them. That's how they are. He came when he was 13. And Barca got him, and that's when they recruit. Mm-hmm. But even coming here, how many athletes are forgotten just because, or not even forgotten, that didn't make it because at 13, somebody comes, and imagine your parents don't know anything about it, and they're like, you're not going to take my kid.
That's really nice to hear, Elfid. So I want your advice on how to find that guidance or that motivation when you don't have that.
A lot too, because right now you have a lot of teams that are just out there to take advantage of kids because the parents are paying. It's paid to play sport, right? Mm-hmm. So you're eliminating a lot of talent that can't afford it. I mean, that was the case with me. When I came to the United States, I didn't play. I didn't even know where to go. I couldn't speak English. I mean, you just dropped in the middle of nowhere, right? And you're like, what is going on?
Can I ask how you got through that? Because you came from the US, from Germany. And your coach in Germany wanted to adopt you.
Yeah.
And your mom said no, and you went to the US. Can we talk about that?
Yes, of course. So I'm from Bosnia, the former Yugoslavia, which split up. The war started in 91, 92, and then ended in 98. Obviously, when the war started, a lot of the countries took in the immigrants. That didn't have a home, basically, that was destroyed or taken. My mom, my sister, and we ended up in Germany, which, when we came, it was kind of the same situation. You don't know where to go. You don't speak the language. It's a country. You're just happy to be alive and happy to have food and a roof over your head, right? So when I started going to school, it was very hard, very tough, because it's a different, you're in a different world. And I was 6 years old, first grade. They basically like an English second language. They have all the foreigners in kind of one group to where they're trying to adapt and trying to learn the language. And it was very rough and very tough for me, just because there was a lot of bullying and just the stronger, bigger kids thought that's how you fear. They tried to put fear into you. So after moving to Germany, I started just walking around and going to soccer fields to where one day my age group kind of was playing, and I just asked, can I join? Can I play? And the coach realized that I didn't know how the system works, but luckily he kind of took me in and let me play, let me practice with them, right? So after practicing, he's like, okay, you're good. This is what you have to do, because there's still rules and regulations, which there should be, obviously. So in my small town, it was a small town. There was 20,000 people, So you can imagine how big the town is, right? Everybody knew everybody, and so that's where I started playing soccer, right? And once I started playing soccer, that's when a world of happiness opened up to me, right? Because it didn't matter that I didn't speak the language. It didn't matter where I came from. It didn't matter, who you are at that moment. It's holy cow, he's so good at the soccer field. He's going to benefit us. Because in a sense, that soccer community is its own world. It's its own family. And if you can benefit that family, nobody cares what religion, what background, where, what, you come.
Yes. And isn't that just impeccable that a sport can be almost a universal language, if you will?
Yeah.
And yeah. I have with soccer specifically, the community of soccer is I've always admired the community of soccer. I really have. It is very like that.
Yeah. Especially soccer. It's a world sport played everywhere. It's the number one sport in the world. So, but that's, like I said, that's where kids that I didn't even know they existed at school kind of started. Now I have friends just because I play soccer with them. Now I see them at school. They're like, hey, that's Elfid. Hey, how you trying to introduce me to their friends. We're trying. And now I'm feeling part of the general public instead of being an outsider and feeling like the immigrant and like I'm a nuisance more than the contribution, right? Mm-hmm. So I found soccer basically, that peace and that safe space to where, even if I had hard days or hard times and outside and, because you always, no matter who you are in life, we go through hard days and hard times. And especially for somebody living in a different country and at times not feeling welcomed and not even wanting to be there by choice, but having to. And as a kid, to explain that's, and for me even to understand that at that moment at 6, 7, 8 years old, it was, I didn't know. It was just more about survival,
Yes. And I'm so glad that you found that happiness in your life at that age too. And unfortunately, society is unfair. To immigrants, I think it is an absolute shame. And I don't think anyone should feel shamed to be an immigrant or feel like they have to fit in. But unfortunately, that seemed like the case for you. But it was amazing that you found an outlet like soccer, and it created a community around you where being an immigrant didn't matter, being a certain ethnicity didn't matter, religion and such. So I think that is absolutely beautiful, and I think that's a great lesson for all of humanity. Yes.
So there, like I said, it kind of fell in, and I loved it. I enjoyed it. I played every day. I met friends that I still talk to this day that are German that I probably would have never met if I didn't do that, So once the war was done, it was kind of obviously Germany couldn't keep all the immigrants because there were so many, and they're a small country as well. So at that moment, it was it was 3 countries that came in and said we were willing to help if you don't have a place to go back. And where I'm from, in my city, Vienna, in Bosnia, was basically overtaken, and our home, everything was destroyed, and whatever was left was taken, basically. So there was no future, nowhere for us to return. So at that moment, we had an option to go to Canada, Australia, or the US. And if you had some family members already in one of those countries, it would be easier to adapt, and they kind of encouraged you to go there. So my mom had her cousin, she lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So she got in contact with her, and that's how we ended up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So coming to, and at that moment when my coach realized, and right, because that's where you're the age, I was 13, right? 13 going to 14, and that's where the big clubs recruit you. So at 13, we went to a tournament. Obviously, we're a small town. We went to a big tournament in a big city that hosted, and there were big clubs, big recruits. And after the tournament, I was recruited to the first team. Basically, the city name was Karlsruhe. The club name was KSC. They were in the first division, and their youth team wanted me to play for them. And that's where basically that's a huge step. And that's where my coach was super excited, and I was super excited. It was about an hour drive from my town, well, not an hour drive, it was an hour by train and by bus, but probably about half-hour drive, but at that moment, he saw the potential, and he saw that my potential was basically limitless. I could do so much, and he brought up to, well, how can we keep you here? Is there any way you guys can stay? I'm like, no, like those are the rules, which I completely understand, and we're going to the United States. And he's like, well, what about if I adopt you? And, just even to think about that conversation, you're bringing it to my mom that, escaped and is trying to survive with 2 younger children. And even I remember even like mentioning something to my mom, and she's like, I'm going to the United States for you guys. Like, if you're staying here, how am I going to go? Where am I going to go? And me being the male too, out of them too, it's like, you're kind of going to embrace the male figure and, be the father. I was basically a father figure for my sister,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it was just kind of, looking back, obviously that would have been the right choice, but to make that decision, to make that choice, for my mom, it was virtually impossible, because she was making all the decisions for us. And like I said previously, it was her main thing was education, education. And she kind of pumped that to us, even though she realized, I think, later on how good I was in soccer, because she never did, she was busy working 2-3 jobs. The only way I played was because I was so good, and I was fortunate for my coaches to come pick me up, and basically they paid for me to play, because otherwise I would have never played anywhere, so because my mom, it's a single mother here, and she was working 2 jobs, 3 jobs to survive basically for us, and to just get us through education. Coming here, it was very, very difficult, again, because everything's so far, and there's no public transportation either, right? That you can hop on the bus and go to a soccer field or whatnot and kind of meet people. So for the first 6 months, I didn't really know anyone. So I actually, but I subconsciously, now that I think about it, I was feeling the same way as when I came to Germany, right? So, but because there was no soccer, I couldn't play soccer. I couldn't find a community. I couldn't go anywhere. It was kind of like, what do I do? So I realized basketball was big, and I started playing basketball. Ooh. And I found happiness there again, going every day to the park. There was a park right near our apartments, and just going there and started playing pickup, and started learning, and started just doing that, and started again being meeting people, having friends, to where now I go to high school And I played with some of these guys in the park, and they'll talk to me. They'll sit at me lunch. They'll, finding that community, finding some kind of common ground,
Yes. It's really nice to hear how all of these sports for you, whether it's soccer or basketball or whatever you immersed yourself in, have really built a community for you. And I can see how that would be for a lot of other athletes who feel lonely or were refugees or, whatever their case may be. Sports, it's kind of like you mentioned, everyone shows up to play pickup. For this example, like you mentioned, everyone kind of shows up to play, and they all have one commonality and one thing in common, regardless of their past or
anything.
It brings a lot of power into sports because of that.
Yeah. So after 6 months of basically not finding anyone, I found a couple of friends. They're same thing, but they from Bosnia, but they've been, one of them was here since '96, so he came straight from Bosnia. He wasn't in Germany, and he already knew how it worked, and he started playing soccer. So I started playing soccer with him again, and when he saw me, he's like, "Oh my God, you're so good." So what he did, basically, the high school that I was going to, they didn't have a soccer program. Like they had a soccer program, but it was co-ed, and it was very, I don't know, it wasn't even public. I didn't even know how to play, right? So as a freshman, I didn't even play soccer, right? So then when I met him after the season, he's like, "No, you need to come to my high school. You need to, because they were a big high school and they had a good soccer program. So he's like, we need you on our team." So I ended up actually switching high schools, and he would pick me up and bring me, because the bus wouldn't go there. I didn't live in the region. So he would pick me up and bring me, to the high school every day. And we just put that I lived with him. So I would be in the region, so I could play.
What a good friend. What a good friend.
I
Wonderful
know.
people exist.
Exactly. So, but then again, it's all through, because, he knew that we would help each other out, and it's for the better of the soccer community, soccer world, right? So switched there, played there for a year, and then went to another high school, because we ended up moving, actually, and it was further away. And at that moment too, that coach too wanted me to live, put basically that I lived with him. He's like, "You can just live with me." He's like, "I need you on my team." And I'm like, "I can't do that. It was just too far of a commute." So the team that I played for, they were a powerhouse. They always competed on the state level. They won a couple national state championships and whatnot. And my belief always was when people ask me, to what position do you play, I always try to put myself to where I'm going to help the team the most, right?
Oh, look at that.
And a lot of athletes, and which I think that's where a lot of them, fail too, is because they kind of think, especially playing a team sport, they think, "Oh, it's me. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it." Nobody can do it by themselves, and especially in soccer, there's 11 guys. I mean, you can see. We talked about Messi. Messi hasn't won a World Cup. Messi hasn't won anything on an international stage. What's the difference between Argentina and Barcelona? Well, the difference is because Barcelona groomed, and he's playing with 6 guys that he played with since he moved here, since he was U13, 14, and they won everything. So it's that working for each other, that compact, to where everybody's not, "Hey, I'm the best. Hey, I'm good." In playing a team sport individually, to where do I fit best to help everyone else, right? You need players to bring out Messi.
Yeah, you all need each other. And through that, you guys can succeed. And I always think that sports teach such great life lessons too, but it's interesting how you were able to get in that mindset of, "I want to play in whatever position will help the team," instead of, "It's all about me and I want to look like the star," and such. Yeah. So that's a good mindset. That's great advice too.
Yeah. So it's and a lot of coaches here, they don't necessarily know how to put the teams together to where they work the best. You put the best individuals that'll benefit the team. even though you don't have the best individuals. You know, you can put the best 11 guys, but that doesn't mean that they're going to win anything, because they're best at being them. You know, they're not the best for the team.
That is a good point. Good point, because it's kind of like you think, oh, they're the best. Let's put them all on one team and see what happens. But really, it might blow up in their face because it's about the chemistry that goes on and the interpersonal relationships that a lot of people would never think that would be the case, that would make a team successful.
Yeah, psychology plays a big role, and some of the top coaches, top coaches in the world, and they're more psychologists than actually trainers, right? Because at that level, everyone knows how to kick a soccer ball. Everyone knows how to run. You know, you have a fitness coach they don't have anything to do with fitness. They don't have to have anything to do with strength training.
Really?
You know, they're more tactical and psychology. So psychological, right? When they bring in players, how do you get the best out of the player? How do you get the player to do what he needs to do to benefit the team? You know, but we're all selfish individuals, right? Too. So you kind of have to find that balance. And you know, one of my favorite coaches, Carlo Ancelotti, when he was coaching AC Milan, he said, you know, I have 5 guys that that are on the bench that are the best of the best. So how do you keep that team still together to where when they come in, they're still going to give 110% and they're not going to be mad for not starting? You know, so exactly. So it's that psychological and always translating to where, look, at the end of the day, it's a team, you know. Or how do you get a player that's, you know, there just to kind of score a forward to hustle back and help out defensively, you know? So that's what makes great players. But a player doesn't know that, because a player, it's, hey, I'm a forward. Why should I work defensively, right? I'm a forward. But the coach has to bring that together. The coach has to make sure that he understands and he has a plan for the whole team to be on the same page. And at that moment, the team's going to do well and win, you know?
Yeah, so this is good advice. Being a team, just that is enough.
Yeah.
This is so great. Okay, so Elfid, lastly, I could talk to you forever about this, but we have to end at some point. What do you believe would benefit other footy players?
Well, kind of what we just talked about with the coaches and the mentality and psychology, right? I believe psychology is a huge aspect of the sport, and that's missing, and that's, you know, not taking this serious as it should be. Obviously, at the top level, they do take it serious. For players, you're always gonna have down, you know, just like we're human beings, we're not robots. You're going to have bad games. You're going to have fantastic games. You're going to have your ups and downs. What you're looking for and what you need on the field is consistency, right? With every team, and as you grow with every youth, you're going to go through different stages, and especially through different coaches, right? Playing high school, playing college, playing club, switching club teams, you know, and then later on in your adult life, wherever you go. For me, it was always, like I said before, you know, where I was most successful in is when I was there to help the team out, right? So you have to, even if it's something that you don't want to hear, it's to think about it and to realize, okay, well, I don't like playing right back. I'm not good at it. Obviously, you want to try to believe in the vision of the coach and try to do, because he believes in you, and that should be enough, right? So he believes in you that you can play that position, and at that moment, even though you might not like that position, that might be the best for the team, right?
Yes, that's a really good point, because I think that's really common. A lot of athletes, I don't want to play this position, you know, this isn't what I've trained in and such. But really, if you think about it in a bigger picture, it's benefiting the team, and therefore you succeed.
Exactly.
And you become a great humanitarian because you learn to work as a team and
Exactly.
not be a robot.
And be there, for what's our end goal? Do we want to win this game, or do we just want to play and have fun and everybody kind of do their own thing? So we always want to be all on the same page and try to be. It's very hard, and especially when you have 18 guys that are eager to play constantly and that want to be there and that want to continue improving. And then another thing is what I noticed and what I made a mistake in, or not, I wouldn't say, I guess mistake, what I didn't know, I wish I would have known is talking more, talking to the coaches more and knowing what the reason is, right? So a lot of times, for instance, a coach won't play you, right? A player gets in their head and then it's just kind of downhill. They're like, oh my God, I'm not good enough. And our minds are so complex. I mean, they go a million ways to where it could be as simple as, oh, this team, I need you for the next game. I need you because the next game is more important. But for a player, it goes, it could be going like, oh, I'm horrible. Oh, I should have practiced more. I should have done this. You're kind of doubting. There's so many doubts, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of breaking your head about why and trying to justify why, just go and ask. Just go and ask the coach, hey, coach, why didn't I start last game? What was the reasoning? What do I need to improve? If it is something that you're not, you have to go in with an open mind and be okay with whatever the answer is, right? Do not be scared of the answer, because the only way you're going to improve is to get answers, because we only know as much as we know, right? And once how do we learn? We learn the new information comes from somebody else. And that's how we learn. And we're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay, I understand. So this is what you need me to do. Yes. Okay, if I do this, then I'll start next time. So at that moment, you can grow as a person and as a player.
Thank you for saying this. I'm getting so excited that you have just said that, because preach. I couldn't say that enough. So thank you for saying that. I swear I did not pay him to say that. That I could not agree more. And it's scary. It's scary to ask, especially if you care a lot about what they think of you and you're young. It's scary. But I think what you said about how important it is, and just thinking about the end goal, it can create a little courage in someone to go and ask. And the only way you're going to know is if you ask.
Even if it's something that you don't like to hear. And what we do, we get defensive, of course, and we argue back or we get angry, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, how many times were we all in that position? But at the end of the day, that new information still came through. So subconsciously, later on, when you calm down, you're like, well, does he have a point? Maybe he is right. I mean, I caught myself, hundreds of times doing that, getting in an argument or in a discussion or something that's going against my beliefs. But then later on, when you calm down, when you really think about it, like, oh, well, I guess they do have a good point, and that's just that thought alone is you already made a step in growth. Yes. Right? You're already seeing a different point. You're already seeing something that you didn't see before. You're already understanding something differently. And that's that's where the psychology comes in. That's where the growth comes in with players. And I think it's very, very important, and if coaches, teams have it, I think, they can do huge things. And obviously that's why professional teams have them, for players to go and talk. And of course they have a lot more pressure than somebody, playing in high school. But the pressure to the high school kid as a athlete or as a student, it's the same as a professional. It's just different levels. Yes. But to them as a person, it's the same still, because they don't know different. They don't know that pressure yet. This is their pressure. This is what they're dealing with. Yes. So if they have a hard time overcoming it in high school or at U12 or U10, how are they going to overcome it when the pressure is 10 times more, down the line when they are playing for MLS, MLB, NFL team? I mean, that makes a huge difference. And
oh yes, it's only going to make them stronger, and in the moment it's uncomfortable. It's like, oh, they're mad at me, or oh, I got, but it's going to make you so much stronger and so much more capable of having those rough conversations in the future. Whew, communication. Cheers to communication.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Elfid. This was incredible to speak with you and hear all of your advice and tips and tricks and your life. Your life is truly admirable.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing the interview, and it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure meeting you. It was a pleasure having this conversation. So I always enjoy these conversations, and hopefully, when something comes out of it to where at least one or two kids learn, or athletes, or get some advice to where it'll change their lives. So I mean, that's what we want. We want humanity to grow and to become better, right? So.
Absolutely, that's all I care about. And I have these discussions with you all day. But
Same here.
Thank you so much, Elfid.
Thank you. Bye.
This is Lacey Everett here with Minds in Motion. In order to help others, subscribe, which is free, so we can continue building our positive mental health community. Share it with friends and family so they can reap of the benefits as well. I truly care about your success, so I would love to see your comments and thoughts.